Welcome to Module 3, where you will learn how to attract high-end clients. In the previous module, you dealt with the planning part of your webinar. Now it's time to start thinking about how will the people come to know about your webinar. This task that stands tall before us is going to take some ingenuity and smart work on your part. Of course, the technology is available for you to make it work effectively. Ask yourself, who is your target audience? The people who will get attracted to your webinar will mainly be those who are either striving to develop their career in that field, or people who are interested in giving their career a push to increase revenue. There may also be highly experienced professionals who are just looking for new ideas and different perspectives. After gaining a new insight into their field of expertise, the ideas presented in your webinar should be such that these people are able to mold them into their own style. To begin with, you should have in mind the number of participants who will attend to your webinar. If this is your first webinar ever, then you may want to start with a small number of participants. As you gain confidence and a little more experience, you can increase the number of people who will attend it. Let's see what else will be required to have your webinar known to everyone. What is the aim of your webinar? What does it want to convey, and with whom do you want to share it? These are the questions which will lead you to ways which can help your approach and attract the right audience. For instance, if your webinar is about adventure sports, then the target audience includes everyone in the world. Of course it is, with the prerequisite that the person has knowledge of surfing and working on the internet. It could include people who are interested in adventure activities such as rafting, kayaking, trekking, and so on. There will be people who may be interested in making a career out of it. Now it depends on the purpose of your webinar, whether it is aimed towards helping people and make a career out of adventure sports or simply sharing the information. Even though your webinar includes both these purposes, then your target audience will be large in number. The audience may include business owners, entrepreneurs, or adventure sports enthusiasts. If you want to invite all of these to your webinar, then the approach will have to be different for each. For people interested in adventure, the sample webinar may be designed in a way that emphasizes on talent and hunger for adventure sports. Whereas business owners, it may be designed in a way that emphasizes on profit, sales, innovative ideas for their line of business. For a start, you can create a website that features your achievements, your aim, how will your webinar help people, what's in it for them, and lastly, it should contain a trial pack of your webinar. This trial pack should be kept free of charge. A page in the website should also invite people to register free of charge and give their reviews on the webinar. After a few people have gone through it, they will be interested in gaining further knowledge about your webinar. The webinar should create some kind of inquisitiveness as well as adequate interest in them, so that they will be keen on taking the next step. You need to remember that the first impression is the last impression, and therefore the content that you present the first time should be interesting and should end with a word or two about how they can gather more information and benefit much more if they enroll to your paid courses. When you make your webinar a paid one, you can change the perspective of your participants about your webinar. Imagine yourself signing up for a free webinar and then imagine it when you're signing up for a paid one. Is your point of view and the level of seriousness the same in both cases? Of course not. You immediately go into the line of thinking that the one which is free can be missed, but the one you've paid for cannot be missed because you have paid your hard-earned money for it. Similarly, another thing in which the participant's point of view differs is that they perceive the paid one to be of higher value than the one which is free of cost. Well, most of us would think that way. People will also take the paid webinar more seriously than the one that's free. That's simple human psychology. Let's consider a situation where you have offered a free webinar in an attempt to enhance your business. What do you think is your unique selling point? Have you included a glimpse of it in the free webinar? If yes, then what does it convey? Do you think it will catch everyone's attention and also create a stir in the prospective participants? These are some important answers to which will decide the number of people that sign up and the turnout on the day of your webinar. Your basic aim of offering the free webinar should be to generate curiosity and interest that it prompts the person to register for your webinar, especially the paid one. The free webinar is an attempt on your part to form the first impression, so you need to make the most of it. It should be so impressive and have such an impact that even someone not from that particular field should have the urge to know more about it. Your initial few slides and the slides at the end need to be very impactful. For instance, if your webinar is about interior decoration, then the first as well as the last few slides should explain how your webinar can add value to their business in terms of sales, revenue, expansion, and so on. How about making a brief but a great video which serves as an introduction to your webinar? This can contain such details which will immediately make people feel like registering for your webinar. This can include things such as what all they will learn and how they can apply it to their field of business. Creating a video is a great way of creating the enthusiasm required for people to register for your webinar. Your enthusiasm should show in the video. That's the most important thing to do because enthusiasm is indeed contagious. If required, make a role play a part of the video which can effectively demonstrate how a person can benefit from your webinar. If there are people who have actually followed strategies you believe in, then have their review shown in the video. Once you have been able to create the enthusiasm it is necessary to not let the momentum just fly past you without making the most of it. What is meant by this is that now your actual webinar should be so good that it justifies all the enthusiasm and also goes in accordance with what you and the others have said in the video. The webinar should be able to retain your participants and convert them into loyal customers. Now that you have understood the target audience, their line of thinking and the kind of actions you should take to attract the right people, you are ready to explore the various ways in which you can make your webinar known. Throughout the process, you should never lose sight of the main purpose of conducting your webinar. For instance, if the webinar is being conducted to promote the sales of your sports gear, then you have identified the target audience as people who are passionately involved in adventure activities or are themselves in the same business. Have you identified what you are good at? Is it blogging or social networking? Well, it's time to identify it and put your energy into it. The first step is to open your own blog and write about adventure sports. You can mention that you are conducting a webinar on the kind of sport gears required for all kinds of adventure activities. You can include all the special features of the webinar, which you think will arouse interest of people visiting your site. It is necessary to start your blog well in time so that people are able to follow your blog if they are keen on attending your webinar. You can cash in on the fact that many people search the news websites for information on various things. So, you could have a press release through any of the wire services such as the Business Wire. On such platforms, it is important to give information such as who exactly is the webinar for and what is it about. Because the search criteria that people use are specific and you need to use those specific words in the headline. Do you think that the younger people will be more attracted to your webinar? If that's the case, then you can promote the webinar through various social networking websites such as Facebook, Twitter, and so on. There are many microblogging services also which you can make use of. You can always use banner advertisements that can easily be displayed on websites related to the topics of your webinar. It would be a great idea to try link building. For instance, to promote your webinar about adventure sports gear, you can joint venture with a travel site for providing a link to your website, which gives them information about your webinar. The underlying logic of doing this is to attract those people to your webinar whose interests already lies in the same direction. Of course, since this is going to be a paid initiative towards promoting your webinar, so you can decide whether it's worth it or not. This means that each sign-up will entail you paying up a commission to the affiliate website. There are other ways in which you can promote your webinar, such as putting posters or distributing flyers at shops, talking about it to everyone you meet, sending mails to people in your mailing list, sending it across your alumni, and so on. If you don't want to send a mail directly about the webinar, then you can write a short but catchy line about it in your signature line. Well, it is your ingenuity that will play a role here. You think you have done everything to promote your webinar, and the attendance is going to be 100%. That is only if the world was such a perfect place. While different people imply different lives and different priorities, you can expect at least 40 to 50% of people who will register but will not turn out on the day of the webinar. And here lies our challenge. So why not try and make the number of non-attendees lesser than that? After all, you have taken a lot of effort in planning, preparing, and promoting your webinar, haven't you? So you definitely deserve better. If your webinar is free, then you can expect attendance much lesser than the same for a paid one. The question is, what can you do to ensure that these people who have registered themselves turn up on that day? One way is to send reminder emails one day prior to the webinar. There are times when, in spite of reminder mails, people have not turned up. Then you can send a follow-up mail to those who could not come. This mail should contain information that was covered in the webinar, but in short. This mail should be more of a way to promote the webinar specifically to them, highlighting the main features of the webinar. You can also extend some incentives to these people for registering for the webinar again by a particular date, such as free consultations or CDs and other related material at a lower rate. Most of these methods should work well, considering the huge market covering the entire world. Whether you have a popular topic or an unusual subject, equipped with the right methods of promoting your webinar, you'll be assured of success.